Hello again, welcome to another edition of Video Breakdown. For this episode, I'm going to break down the amazing trifecta anime music video, Tokyocitypop.
Tired of niggas not put it in effort. I put in effort like kids making sweatshirts. Niggas on my way, but run when we hit glaciers. Please tell her that I owe her for her labor. And bitch, if you toxic and killing my vibe, I fade away like him Jada's wife. Girl, I don't play, so don't treat this like dice. Only roll sevens, you wanna snake eyes. Niggas be
I don't think I've learned more about video editing than I did with any other single video. This is why it took so long to make the video. I was learning and experimenting with so many different things: color corrections, aspect ratios, overlays, proxies, rendering formats, codecs, and other various workflow managements. This video was complicated and required a staggering 90 hours to edit, but in the end I gained so much knowledge and I was able to create an awesome video. I'd like to take a moment to give a special thank you to Jordan D. Mitchell for giving me the opportunity to create this video. I truly appreciate it. Also, at the time, I had just quit smoking. I remember waking up in the morning and slapping on the nicotine patch, then went off to edit the video. So this video really helped to distract me from wanting to smoke. Since this AMV is basically comprised of 3 songs in one master song, I'll be breaking this song down in 3 parts, treating each song as its own video breakdown. This is bar none the greatest looking project I've ever worked on. I love seeing all the adjustment layers, the audio tracks, overlays. It's so rad. Yes, it's true, I'm geeking out over a timeline. To start this off, let's talk about the look of Song 1 from Tokyocitypop. Overall, I was trying to go for a vintage 70s look. I really love how 70s films look and feel. There's just something that's instantly romantic to a 70s film. They have such charm and warmth to them, it's fantastic. Starting from the top, this video has an artificial 2.35 aspect ratio. This is just a crop overlay that I found on the internet, but you can always create your own with any graphic designing software or by using the crop effect within your own video editing software. This is what gives it those 2 black bars on the top and bottom. This aspect ratio is commonly seen in kung fu movies such as Enter the Dragon and 36 Chambers. It gives the video a layer of cinematic warmth. Next, we have film damage. These are comprised of grain, scratches, and color warping. There are a total of 4 video overlays that create the look of this video. 2 film grain overlays, 1 scratches overlay, and 1 color warp overlay. The reason why there's so many overlays is because I really wanted to get that old and dirty vintage quality to the video. Now, I found these overlays on YouTube and other websites. Like this 35mm film grain here is actually a free download somewhere off a website. But since making this video, I found a website that sells these kinds of overlays. The website is filmlooks.com. This is not at all a paid advertisement, by the way. I just really dig the look and quality of their overlays. The last overlay is a color warp overlay. This overlay is what causes the colors to shift or to distort. The last element of this first song's look is the actual color correction. This color correction gives the video an even more vintage quality. The colors become less vibrant, there's a bit of faded film added in, skin tones and highlights become less brown and become more pinkish bluish. It's kind of hard to tell it's there, but there is a slight sharpen reduction. All it does is softens the video without blurring it, again giving it a vintage look and creating an overall warmer feeling. of the things that I experimented with is creating the illusion that the title card is shaking from the film reel rotating. Just another way to replicate that authenticity. This was pretty simple but very tedious. Under the motion section, I placed a position keyframe at the very beginning of the text clip. I leave the position at its default 960 by 540. 3 frames after that, I placed another position keyframe. This time I adjusted the position to 960 by 539. 3 frames after that, I add another position keyframe. I adjust the position to 960 by 541. 3 frames after that, I add another keyframe and adjust the position to 961 by 540. You can see that you really don't need to make each position change that dramatic. You really only need to adjust the position by a couple of pixels. After that last keyframe, then these keyframes get copied and pasted to create a seamless loop. So this shot here in the video is actually doctored. It isn't the real original shot. This is the original shot from the girl who leapt through time. Before I get into why I did this, I'll start by explaining what I did first. I start by duplicating this clip here. Next, I'm going to find the exact point when Makoto turns all the way towards Chiaki. Once I find that point, I'm going to add a frame hold. This basically freezes the clip and any footage beyond this point in the timeline. It creates sort of a snapshot of that one frame, and it allows you to extend that one frame to any length you want. It could be 3 frames, it could be 300 frames. I'm going to delete everything prior to this point. I'm going to place this frame held clip above and at the very beginning of the original clip. After that, I'm going to extend the duration of this clip to match the duration of the original clip. At this point, when I play back what I have so far, nothing happens. That's because all you're seeing is a still image of that one frame. Now I apply the crop effect to my duplicated clip. I then set the left side to 50%. Now you can see that Chiaki is completely visible, and when I play the video back now, Makoto is looking towards Chiaki as he's walking away. So why did I do this? Well, for 2 reasons. First, the original clip is roughly 5.5 seconds long, and I only have less than 2 seconds to work with. So this allowed me to fit the content that I wanted into a shorter window. Second, when I create these videos, the things that I latch onto the most is emotion, story, and characters. Everything else is background noise. So to me, the original shot and the altered shot are practically night and day. The altered shot evokes so much more emotion than the original shot. This little effect I've used a couple times, most notably in the Nobody Speak AMV. This one is just a little bit different though. Now the way I edited this effect might look different on your timeline. Maybe it's just my computer, but some effects with keyframes lock up and just don't play back. So my only workaround is to apply effects to clips and to multiple adjustment layers. So in a perfect scenario, I would have all of these effects contained to just one adjustment layer. Let's start with applying a directional blur to a new adjustment layer. I placed 2 keyframes, one at the beginning and one at the end of the adjustment layer. The first keyframe's blur length is set as 0, the second is set to 50. So as the video is spinning, it's becoming more and more blurry in a vertical direction. Next, I apply an offset effect to my clip. I set a shift center to keyframe at the very beginning and at the very end of the clip. The first is set to 8400, the second is set to 240. The larger difference between each keyframe increases the rotation speed. Now here's what makes this transition different. This was another piece of knowledge that I picked up during the making of this video. I discovered that if you go to the Effect Controls panel and click on this arrow at the top right, you get a complete list of every keyframe that you laid down. In the keyframes list window, you see a little line that's scaling upwards or downwards. What I discovered is that you can adjust the curve of how quickly or how slowly keyframes transition. Meaning instead of having your effect go from A to B at a steady 45-degree angle, you can have your transition move slowly, 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 then quickly pick up speed. Which is what I did for this effect. It's not an immediate roll, it gradually rotates around, then picks up speed. The story of this first song is fairly surface level, meaning that there isn't a whole lot of interpretation. What makes the story special is the lyrics themselves. The anime footage just helps carry the lyrics, or vice versa. But like I mentioned before about the look of the video, the dirty vintage 70s look evokes a warm, romantic feeling. First, I'd just like to mention that this might be one of my favorite intros to a song ever. I love the way it slowly builds to an explosive start. It's like pulling back a slingshot, then letting it go. For the look of song 2, I wanted something that was clean, yet had a dangerous energy to it. So my inspiration for this look came from the film Mad Max Fury Road. It uses reds, yellows, and oranges to give you that hot and dangerous energy. First, I start by creating an adjustment layer. Next, I apply a Lumetri color effect. In the creative section, the look option is set to Cinespace with an intensity of 50. Under adjustments, I have my vibrance cranked to 25. Here's the settings I used for the shadow and highlight tints. Finally, for the creative section, my tint balance is set to -75. This was to make sure that those blue skies stayed a nice baby blue. Moving on to the basic correction section, I have my temperature set to 15. This was to further accentuate those reds, yellows, and oranges. And for the final color adjustments, under the tone section, I have the contrast set to -50, highlights -15, shadows -20, whites -5, and blacks -30. This title card was actually made from scratch. No custom font, no third-party software, it was all me. Obviously, I was using the Mad Max Fury Road movie poster as a reference point. To start, I copied the yellowish-orange color of the rocks in the background and used it as the main color of the text. Then I overlaid an image over the text. This gives the text some additional texture, which kind of look like the rocks in the background of the video. I added some blood particles strewn across the text. Finally, I added a drop shadow effect within Premiere Pro to give the text an extra hefty thickness to it. This editing trick is the same trick I used in the Bad Bitch AMV. Let me start by showing you the original unaltered shot. As you can see, Vegeta is actually talking in this shot as the camera scrolls up to his face. Just like before, I'll explain how I did this, then I'll get into the why later. I start by duplicating the clip that I'm working with. I find the point in the clip where Vegeta opens his mouth to speak. I go one frame back and add a frame hold. So now we have another one of those still image clips. Next, I'll drop a crop effect onto the duplicated clip. Because I want to keep Vegeta's mouth closed and everything else moving, I'm going to create a circular mask. This will target a specific area that I need altered without tampering the rest of the video, in this case Vegeta's mouth. Mask feather is set to 0, mask opacity is set to 100%, and mask expansion is set to 0. Invert is enabled. Finally, my crop is set to 100% on the left side. It really doesn't matter if it's left, right, top, or bottom, you'll get the same results in the end. Now when I play all of this back, it appears as though Vegeta is no longer talking. I did this because I wanted both Goku and Vegeta to be perfectly mirroring each other. Even though Vegeta talking a little bit isn't that big of a deal, having them both stand there doing and saying nothing like statues just looks way, way more cooler to me. This is another neat little trick I picked up through my years of video editing. In Dragon Ball Z and other various anime, they use black and white frames to punch up the impact of a punch or an explosion. I discovered that by placing a dip to white transition between two clips and setting the transition to 2 frames, you can create an artificial flash. In the song, the music sounds like it's being played in reverse, So my immediate reaction was to create some kind of montage. It was tremendously difficult to translate what I was seeing in my head and putting it into video form. So when I'm editing, sometimes I like to jot down notes and try to visualize what I'm seeing on paper. Most of the time, I take these notes on whatever scrap of paper I can find, and it's usually an old receipt. Also, you might be surprised to learn that my inspiration of this montage came from the final episodes of Lost. Yeah, I know, shocking, right? Starting with this first clip at the bottom, it's a montage of all the events leading up to that point in the film. I sped this up dramatically to fit within my 15.09 second allotment. Above that, we have this nested clip here. Inside this nested clip, we have these two clips from Resurrection F. Nothing special. This made the next part much easier for me to edit. If I turn on video keyframes, you can see that I have this little zigzag thing going on with my opacity keyframes. The opacity goes from 100% all the way down to 33%. You can see that the ebb and flow of the opacity keyframes match the third layer of clips. The third set of clips match the momentum of the music. Just real quick, this nest here is just a series of clips to create a loop. Each clip has a specific cropping mask of Vegeta. The cropping mask has a keyframe mask expansion that decreases by the end of the clip, meaning that as time passes, the crop mask shrinks and eventually completely removes the video. On each of these clips, I applied a 3-frame dip to white transition to create a quick flash. The story of Song 2 is simple. It's all about being the best. In this case, being locked in an endless stalemate between two great warriors. Some of you might know that I've done this look before with the Kids in America AMV. It's obviously a damaged VHS look, sort of an homage to the 80s era. I'll start with the RGB splitting. This is what causes the colors to separate slightly. I start by applying an arithmetic effect to my clip. I set the operator to max. I set my opacity's blend mode to screen. I duplicate my clip twice and stack them one on top of the other. Starting from the top, I set the red value of the arithmetic effect to its max value, 255. Going down one, I set the green value of the arithmetic effect to 255. The last clip's blue value is set to 255. On the red value clip here at the top, I adjust the position from 960 to 945. This is the actual color splitting. The final touch, I like to add a Gaussian blur effect to my red channel clip. I have the blurriness set to 25. This softens harsh edges and gives it an extra layer of authenticity. Moving on to some further color correcting, I create an adjustment layer. I apply a color balance HLS effect. I set the hue to -10 degrees. This distorts the colors slightly. Next, I apply a lumetri color effect to my adjustment layer. Under the creative section, I have my faded film set to 65 and my vibrance set to -40. My shadow tint is green and my highlight tint is bluish purple. This further distorts the true colors of the footage. Moving on to the basic correction section, I have my temperature set to 10 and my tint to 30. Undertone, I have my highlights set to 15 and my blacks set to -35. Now I apply a Gaussian blur effect to my adjustment layer. Blurriness is set to 8 and blur dimensions is set to horizontal and vertical. This removes that sharpness that HD media has and turning it into standard definition or lower. The last effect I added to this adjustment layer is a noise effect. The amount of noise is set to 20% and color noise is enabled. Moving on, we can now add our VHS overlays. These are just the ones that I found on the internet. Again, check out filmlooks.com for some cool overlays. As far as the opacity blend mode is concerned, I have mine set to lighten, but you can always play around with the different modes and see how it affects your footage. Finally, the last thing that completes this VHS look is the 4:3 aspect ratio. Again, this is just a crop overlay, but you can always make one yourself or use the crop effect. I start by making an edit 12 frames into the red channel clip. I adjusted the position of this new clip from 945 to 900. This was to dramatically split the colors. After that, on the nested clip, I applied an offset effect. I add an offset keyframe at the beginning of the clip and 12 frames after that. The first keyframe is set to 960 by 270. The second is set to 960 by 540. This is what creates that rolling effect. Next, I create a new adjustment layer for additional effects. This adjustment layer is 12 frames or half a second long, same as the length of that red channel edit that I made earlier. I apply a Gaussian blur effect. Blurriness is set to 15. After that, I apply 2 wave warp effects to my adjustment layer. You can see that I have this first wave warp labeled as noise. This is what gives the distortion the appearance of static. On this noise wave warp, I have my wave type set to noise, wave height set to 75, wave width set to 25, speed 0.5, pinning none, and anti-aliasing is set to low. The second wave warp is labeled as bend. Clearly this is what causes that wavy bending motion in the distortion. My wave type is set to sine, height is -250, width is 1000, speed 0.5, pinning is set to vertical edges, and anti-aliasing is set to low. So when you play all of this back, you get a cool distortion effect. This was another effect that I picked up while editing this video. It gives the appearance that the video is being rewound or forwarded. I start by adding a wave warp effect to my nested clip. Wave type is set to smooth noise, height is set to 15, width is set to 10,000, wave speed is set to 0.5, pinning is set to vertical edges, and anti-aliasing is set to low. This is what causes the video to wobble slightly. I use this on song 3's titles. I add another adjustment layer above my color correction layer. I apply a noise effect. I set the noise amount to 100% and leave the noise type disabled. Next, I apply another wave warp effect. Wave type, sawtooth, height 20,000, width 500. The direction is set at 182 degrees. This is to get the right angle of the white lines. Speed is 0.5 and pinning is none. I have the opacity of this adjustment layer at 75% and the blend mode set to lighten. Now, it wasn't really needed for this particular clip, but what you can do is you can speed up the clip and even reverse the clip to really give the illusion that the video is being reversed or forwarded. This part is a bit convoluted, but I hope you can follow along with what I'm doing. I place a marker here and here. I make an edit on each marker. Going into this nest, I make an edit under the first marker. Similar to the VHS distortion transition, I move the red channel clip's position from 945 to 915. Going back to my main timeline, I apply a wave warp effect to this clip here. My wave type is square, height 150, width 2000, wave speed 0, pinning vertical edges, and phase is -8 degrees. This is what causes that dramatic splitting damage to the video. After that, I apply a color balance HLS effect. My hue is set to -145 degrees, the rest is left at its default. This completely shifts the colors of the video. I add a couple VHS overlays without blending them with the video. In the audio track beneath the music track, I have a couple VHS hum sound effects. On the last clip here at the end, I apply a Gaussian blur effect, blurriness 15 horizontal and vertical, and repeat edge pixels. I apply 2 wave warps. The first, noise 75, 25, 0, 0.5, none, 0, low. The second, sine 150, 1000, 0, 0.5, vertical edges 0 and low. I then apply an offset effect. My first keyframe at the beginning is set to 960 by 0. The next keyframe, 6 frames after that, is set to 960 by -270. Then my last keyframe 1 second after that position is set to 960 by -1620. I add a black video here. I apply a noise effect. amount 100%, and color noise enabled. I apply a sharpen effect with an amount of 1000. Finally, I apply a crop effect. Left and right 31%, top and bottom 28%, with an edge feather of 50. I have two keyframes set at the beginning and at the end of this sound effect here. The first keyframe is set to the parameters from before, the second is set to 50% all the way down. The story of Song 3 takes it back from Song 1. It's just kind of about love and life. Because the song is called Tokyocitypop, I wanted to make cityscapes a visual motif. I wanted to make cities and cinematography more prominent throughout Song 3 and push back on character importance. This felt very strange, but also very refreshing to me. Like I mentioned earlier, when I'm editing, emotion, story, and characters matter the most. So it felt foreign to push back on what I know so well. That being said, it was satisfying to get out of my comfort zone and try to edit a different way. It was fun to set limitations for myself because then I had to think my way out of that box. In the end, I was able to balance the cinematography and the characters well enough. As an added bonus, I want to show you the original end credits sequence that I created. I really like these original end credits, but they were just way too long. You just gotta know when you've overstayed your welcome, so I made the credits much simpler.
I cannot compete when there's no competition. No, my boss girl, I made that decision. I make the waves that you surfing, you swimming. She let me bang cause I fuck her so different. Made a prediction, my dreams realistic. You live in suspension, my dreams make you live it. Told me to go get it, I went out and fetched it. They called me a dog, I ain't getting no acceptance. And all of that stressing just taught me a lesson.
Was this a good idea or was it a bad idea? Was there nothing wrong with the original end credits? Or was I right to keep the end credits short? Tell me what you think. I hope this wasn't too boring to watch. If you have any suggestions on how to make this series more enjoyable, I'd love to hear them. Hopefully you found this video helpful in your video editing endeavors. I hope that I might have inspired you to create your own AMV or use this knowledge in one of your own videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.